Good afternoon. Welcome to Harlem Stage's Dive Deeper Conversation series, a space for generative conversations around the brilliant work created by artists of color. I'm Monique Martin, Director of Programming. Today, we are honored to bring the work of Afro Swedish musician and author Jason Timbuktu Diakité. His best-selling book turned play, A Drop of Midnight, is our next Waterworks commissioned project. It was scheduled to premiere on March 30th of this year, then moved to October 13th, and now has been postponed until fall of 21 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Jason is one of Sweden's most well-known and respected hip-hop artists. He released his first music in 1996 and has since released 8 solo albums, many of them going platinum, gold and platinum. In 2016, he wrote and released his first critically acclaimed book, A Drop of Midnight, which has sold more than 100,000 copies to date and is also available on Amazon in English-speaking territory. So you can pick up one here at your local bookseller. I wanted to also let you know the book traces and tracks Jason's family's history from slave plantations in South Carolina to Harlem to Sweden. We also have on this panel legendary DJ Babito Garcia, also known as Kool Bob Love. He is the critically acclaimed author of Where'd You Get Those Shoes? Where'd You Get Those? New York City's sneaker culture from 1960 to 1987. He's also one of the legendary founders of the Stretch and Babito Show. And as a filmmaker, his award-winning film, Doing It in the Park, Pick Up Basketball, and the Stretch and Babito Show, Radio That Changed the World. Mapei is an Afro Swedish musician and vocalist who is also born here in America. Not also, she is born here in America. So she brings her American and Swedish work and artistry to this panel. Her album, her first record, Good Hot Butter. Sorry, you guys, I just got
Cocoa Butter Diaries.
Cocoa Butter Diaries.
Hot Butter Diaries. Thank you very much for jumping in there.
Yeah.
And our moderator for this evening is Thembisa Mshaka. She is a creative executive, author, producer, filmmaker, voice actor, activist, and entertainment branding specialist. She is the author of Put Your Dreams First, Handle Your Music Business, which will be celebrating and re-released in 2021, celebrating its 10th anniversary. She is a copywriter and a BET executive as in the advertising and creative services department. She has written projects for Lauryn Hill's album, and also Will Smith and many, many, many other artists in the field. She was the first woman to write for Gavin. So if you don't know what Gavin is, please look that up. She is definitely, definitely most qualified to lead this conversation. So now I'm going to turn it over to Thembisa to moderate and take us on this journey. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you so much, Monique Martin. Appreciate the warm welcome and helping with the introducing everyone, because I can just dive right into the conversation. So you gave me a really perfect segue in mentioning Gavin, and the golden era of hip hop and the Gavin era pretty much, intersect, overlap really. So I wanted to ask everyone how the golden era of hip hop shapes you as an artist or as a creator. Let's start with Babito.
You're muted, Bob. You need to unmute.
I'm bugging. I'm sorry. It's so crazy that you mentioned the Gavin, because I'm like, I know your name. I know your name from like wild different, resources. But like, yeah, like I knew you as the Gavin. So the Gavin report, not to be self-aggrandizing, but in 1992 and 1993, me and Stretch, our radio show was awarded the best college radio show, according to the publication at the awards in San Francisco. And then additionally, I won best rap promoter in the industry in 1992 and 93, the same 2 years. You know, that said though, and being so formative in the 90s with me and Stretch's show, and the fact that we introduced the world to Nas, Biggie, Wu-Tang, Eminem,
Big
Jay-Z,
L.
Big L, yeah, I mean, on and on. And Timbuktu, the first time his demo, the first time his demo was played in the United States was on our show.
Yeah.
But that all said, and as fond as I am of that era, I don't see the golden era being in the 90s. Actually, it's the 80s for me. When it comes to music, particularly the 86 to 89 cluster of artists and production and lyrics are all really like reaching new heights and consciousness, and that being the foundation for every artist of the 90s that made a mark. I mean, Nas was a student of Big Daddy Kane and Rakim, as was Jay-Z, as was Biggie. I mean, you can name any artist that became like the sort of standard in the 90s. And the 90s is still the standard for all hip hop that's come since. It's all measured back to that era. But if we look
how
at
did it shape you?
Yeah, I'm
as
sorry.
a listener, as somebody who
So I would say
in the thick of that in New York in the 80s, right?
No doubt. Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I would say like 86 to 89 was when consciousness really took a hold of the art form when it came to the spoken word. And while graffiti had been making public statements on trains, and the dancers were expressing themselves in a way that was liberating. Once the spoken expressions could be heard and amplified through music, that's when really hip hop culture found its place as a platform that could be globally earth shattering. And I found myself on that wave of, listening to the artists of that era and being highly influenced, so that by the time I became a public figure myself in 1990 and having, being weekly broadcast with my radio partner Stretch, everything that I learned from the late 80s was what I infused into our radio show when it came to, providing a voice for the voiceless. Me and Stretch were diehards about putting forth the best rap music that could be heard every Thursday night on our show on WKCR 89.9 FM. But it was deeper than that, right? People of color didn't have a voice the way they had in the late 80s and 90s. Prior to that, in any decade, you could listen to blues music and original Black rock and roll, and a lot of things were very coded. Stevie Wonder and Marvin Gaye and Gil Scott-Heron, a lot of artists started speaking their mind and becoming like reflections of what was the times in the Black Power movement and civil rights movement and gay rights movement of the 60s and 70s. But when hip hop took its turn, it really like opened up a language that wasn't there prior, because of the slang, the unapologetic presentation of what was going on. And I was just simply
college
a
and
conduit.
Community radio really gave that conduit, to your point, gave that avenue for hip hop music to be experienced in a broad sense, not just on one person's beatbox or at a party that only affected the local audience. Like everyone had a chance to hear it at that point.
Yep. And because New York was such the centerpiece of this whole global existence, and me and Stretch having, our show in New York, it helped the tape distribution that went across to Japan and to Europe and to Africa and to Latin America. Still to this day, I'm meeting people like, yo, my cousins mailed me a tape, in Bogota, 15 years ago. And that was my introduction to hip, like, crazy stuff. So
to that point, share a little bit about playing Jason's demo back in the 90s. Because
So
I know that's
crazy.
a good story. And
Yeah,
I
so
definitely
crazy.
want to hear his reaction to this.
Right. So basically, you know, me and Stretch started getting booked in Copenhagen, Denmark, which I thought was sort of like, you know, what New York was to the US. I kind of feel like Copenhagen was becoming that for the northern part of Europe. And,
Definitely.
you know, yeah, DJ Typhoon in particular was like booking a lot of indie artists. Not he wasn't booking like, you know, the main acts at the Coliseum. He was booking like, you know, Planet Asia and High and Mighty and Pharoah Monch, you know, all these artists that were kind of like not like mainstream, but very like underground. And it became like this sort of like New York to you know, Typhoon called it the Boulevard Connection. And so, you know, in that process, you know, I was going out to Lund, Sweden, and
Is it just Bobbito's connection that went down? No, there he is.
Oh, I think
He froze, I thought, but is
Yeah.
Oh,
coming back?
I
my
thought
bad.
it was me. I was like, oh no, I froze.
Is he back?
He was back
I think
for a hot second. But as
Where did
we wait for,
can you hear me?
Oh, here we go.
now we
Yep.
can hear you.
Now
we
you're
can hear you.
back.
Now you're back.
Alright.
It was a glitch.
Where-
So you were
in the
saying
matrix.
that you were visiting Sweden.
You went to
right?
Lund,
And
you were
froze.
saying. You went to Lund, Sweden, which is
Yeah.
my hometown. It's crazy, man.
Yeah, so we, you know, so through the Copenhagen Boulevard Connection, basically DJ Typhoon being the promoter, you know, me and Stretch, as well as the artists that we were bringing out from North America, Canada, and the US. You know, Cardinal Fisher had his first overseas show. Mass Influence from Atlanta had their first overseas show in Scandinavia. We were hitting Lund, Gothenburg, Malmo,
Stockholm, probably. Yeah.
you know, I mean, you name it. We were, you know, hitting all these cities, going to Hamburg and Dusseldorf, and you know, and so through that, I would meet a lot of artists at each show, right? And I don't know if it was Sweden or Copenhagen. I don't know. I can't tell you where, but I was handed a demo that said Timbuktu. It was black. I still have it. It was a black
That's
cassette
so
with
crazy, man.
with a white label with blue ink written Timbuktu, and that's all it had on it. They have a phone number. You know, there was
Man,
no
we used to
internet, so they
handwrite
had no,
and
no
just
yeah. It was
That's
just handwritten.
crazy.
Timbuktu. It didn't even have a song title on it.
No. Was there just one track on the tape?
My recollection, I think so. But honestly, like,
Yeah.
you know, you're talking about something like 25
yeah,
years ago, right?
Yeah.
But
what I love about that is that you would take these
You
journeys
remember it. Yeah.
and then you would bring that music back and share it with New York, with your audience to keep that
it wasn't
cycle
just
going.
it wasn't just sharing it with New York. So, you know, you got to remember, me and Stretch had the premier like hip hop show in the world. So I would play I played the Timbuktu demo on 89.9 FM in New York City, you know, because I felt it was important for not just for people to identify with my travels, but for our global audience. Our tapes were being, you know, recorded and
Right.
distributed and bootlegged all across the world. For them to know that, yo, there's a hip hop scene in Scandinavia that's not just like bubbling, receiving us, but they're expressing what they are going through as well. And so when I went to South Africa, and I, you know, I was the first US hip hop DJ to ever perform in post-apartheid South Africa. And when I heard the music that was coming out of their local scene, I took that and I brought it back to New York. You know, Mischief, who passed away some years ago, but I licensed music. So, I mean, you know, for me, it was always like, if it's dope, it doesn't matter where it comes from.
What happened?
Yeah, his connection is. No.
Remember do you remember the song Timbuktu?
I do. I'm just waiting for him to unfreeze. Are you back, Babito?
Oh my God, are you serious?
Okay, so tell you, I just got to say this is incredible because my mom said I was, as a 19-year-old, I was getting into trouble. My stepfather had just passed away, and my family was going through a rough spot. So my mom sent me to live with my uncle in New York. So funny, she would send me from Lund, Sweden to New York to just be, safe and calm down a bit. My sister was working at an office uptown or Upper East Side. She got me a job as like a, office, like receptionist. I'd answer the phone, buy lunch for the boss, get my little $150 a week. I think I was making like $5.50 an hour or something like that. And one of my premier joys in life while living in New York was every Thursday night between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. I knew that Friday morning I would be dead because I was always up for the entirety of the Stretch and Babito show. And the thing was, it's not like you could turn the radio on and just like have your headphones and just chill. You had to be ready have a tape ready and be ready to hit record as soon as, and I'd try to edit out because I'd be listening to it on my Walkman. I'd be trying to edit out like, because y'all would play like music for a long segment and then you talk for a long segment, which also was unusual for radio at the time. Still is, I'd say. So more like a mixtape format. And I wanted to get, like there was some Mobb Deep singles. First time I ever heard them was your show. There's so many firsts. What was that? It was this Pudgy the Fat Bastard remix with Biggie Smalls on it, where he's, that's the first time I ever heard, like just classic stuff. Anyway, while in New York, I was still, I'm doing my office job, but I'm still, nourishing my dream of becoming, a rapper. I was a rapper. I felt like a rapper. Anyway, I got connected with a producer in the Bronx. I went up to see him and I spit my little raps over his beats, and he was just like, "Nah, man, you're not, you don't have what it takes." So I was like, "Fuck, okay, I better just like do what my mom says, cool off, go to college so I can make more than $5.50 an hour, and then that's it, because here's a dude in, New York was the mecca of hip hop. The Stretch and Babito show was like the Kaaba. It was like the main mosque, the main minaret where all the like latest, hippest shit was coming out of your radio show. And then also, of course, Hot 97 was playing shit, but y'all would bump it first, as you know. So I came back to Sweden that summer. And at that point, I had given up my dream of becoming a rapper or living my life as a rapper. I meet a producer from Copenhagen a couple of weeks after I've come back from Sweden, and I'm supposed to start college in the fall. And he's like, "Why don't you come over to my studio and just record a track?" And I'm like, "Nah, man, I'm done with rap." He's like, "Then just come over. Let's just record, man." I go over to Copenhagen. I record a track. The track's called "Look Alive," and it was like the best track I'd ever done to that date. And I was like, "I'm back. Okay, this is, forget college. I'm just gonna keep writing rhymes and recording." So I did that. Fast forward to like 2009 or 10, my friend sends me, I wake up in the morning, check my inbox. I have an email from a friend and it's a link. And he's like, "Check what I found on a blog." And it's a recording of a Stretch and Babito show from the fall of '95, where you are playing Look Alive. And it just blew my mind because like 19-year-old Jason, if I would have known at the time that I had a song that had been played on your radio show, I'd be ready to go to Rapper's Paradise immediately, man.
You would have went back to the Bronx and been like, "See, I told you."
Yeah, you bet. Exactly.
So Mapei, I want to get your take on, that seminal time within hip hop, because you were younger.
Yeah.
But tell me, like, how has it informed you, in terms of being a songwriter and a lyricist and a vocalist? Like what artists or what moments or, what what formative experiences for you as an artist came out of that time period?
Yeah, so basically, it wasn't so musical for me in the beginning because I grew up in Providence, Rhode Island, loud music everywhere, freestyle music, like Two Live Crew, all of that. Neighbors taking care of each other's children. You could say inner city, like project type environment. And then 92, I come to Sweden and it's like the cell, it's completely melancholic, all rock and roll or like Euro techno, you know what I mean? And then all of a sudden I'm like, and then my sister, she's older than me. So she's like, I want to watch your MTV Raps. Like, don't they have anything with hip hop here? So my stepfather was like, so my stepfather was like, there is the show basically, and I can put it on. So we watched it and I was like, I'm one of them, like I saw my reflection. I saw hip hop in myself as like a reflection of what people saw in me in Sweden, because they saw me as what they saw on television on Yo MTV Raps. So I never knew that I was hip hop. I was basically just a kid from the hood in America, hearing hip hop everywhere, wearing the attire, it just came natural. And then all of a sudden I'm like a representative for that in Sweden. So it's like, I never knew that it was a thing, it was just around me. And then all of a sudden I'm talking to these people, and it was like a method of survival, because if someone from like different cultures or, someone would be like racist towards me or try to condescend, I just start rapping or something, you know what I mean? Like Onyx or Wu-Tang, and they'll be like, okay, like they couldn't say anything. So that's basically how I earned my respect here in Sweden.
Yes.
And
women
also
at that
to the
time,
fact that Jackie can go off the top, and I mean she can freestyle like original real freestyle, go off the top
not
of her
kicking
dome.
writtens, no writtens.
She destroys every MC in, I want to say Sweden, but I'm gonna expand it to like Norway and Denmark also. Finland, just throw Finland in there too. I've seen her just destroy people.
Now I'm gonna have everyone attacking me online.
What was but you'll be ready though, so it ain't even a problem. What was your impression of the women MCs of that time period? Like, one of the things that really helped to let me know that I could do it as a hip hop writer was just seeing, women hip hop artists really be unapologetic in their presentation, however that was, whether they were, provocative or more conservative in terms of their appearance, or, whether they like to mix it up with rapping and singing. I just felt like there was such a broad representation of how women delivered it. And I'm just curious as to, what your impression was. I guess at that point you're back in Europe, right? So like, who were some of the women artists of that time that made an impression on you?
So they were like extra moms in the beginning, if I saw like Bahamidia, even the vocalist, like I remember seeing Killa Priest's song Soul and Mo, like it was like Erykah Badu, all these early, like they called it neo soul after, but like more conscious rap. I was like, wow, they're really speaking to me. Like I was in my own world watching these extra mothers, just nurturing me with knowledge that made me proud of myself. And then Lauryn Hill came out, and I just listened to the Miseducation over and over. I wore a turban, like you would see the whole Stockholm, like I don't care if you were blonde, Persian, like wearing turbans with skirts, like, like trying to be vegan. And then like before that, like Foxy Brown or Lil' Kim. So, I don't think it's bad, like it's not good to follow trends, but you followed what was the product of hip hop at the different times, so.
But it also lets you know that like whatever it is that you want to do is possible, because you can see a spectrum, and everybody no one is trying to be like anyone else.
Exactly.
And it wasn't really until maybe, I don't know, like probably like 10 years later or so that I realized when I would go to like these seminars or conferences or events, having written the campaign for the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, a campaign that went on for 2.5 years because she had so many singles, and then got nominated for 10 Grammys and won 5, and, just toured for God knows how long. Outkast opened up on her tour, the first leg of the Miseducation tour. I mean, that's how
they met.
Groundbreaking artist, Lauryn was for, for them. But I didn't realize how much it had impacted a whole generation of women and girls. This one album,
It
right?
really helped. It
So,
helped.
you know, for me, that record was All Hail the Queen, Queen Latifah, you know, but like to see that, that Lauren had that global impact, was pretty phenomenal, you know, in hindsight, you know, when you're in it, when you're on the team making it, you know, you're just in sort of in the fishbowl, not realizing that it's not the ocean, you know? So when I came out and could really step and look and see, it was phenomenal to see what an impact it had on women around the world.
Yeah,
So
because she
yeah,
was
I get
both
that.
feminine and very, you know, she had everything at once. So when she came out with the Unplugged album, it was like, you know, she just took it even further into knowledge and consciousness and everything. So she really helped a lot of people evolve and develop and find themselves.
Yes.
And
So
also just the
Jason,
fact that
go
her
ahead.
skills and her like her lyrics and flow, like not only can she sing incredibly, but she can rap, like she can challenge almost any, you know,
Yeah, a true
she can go
MC.
head to head with Andre 3000, like no problem. You know, just like you, Jackie.
Aw.
So let me ask you guys a question about, like, you know, what you feel hip hop's, we know what the power is, right? Because we've seen how pervasive hip hop has become and that it has really held up over time in terms of being something that influences generations and that creates noise and that moves the needle, that creates change and awareness in really substantive ways. But I'm just curious as to, you know, what you see the export being now from you know, hip hop in America to the rest of the world, and whether, you know, you have a thought about the impact of that. You know, is it more about the moment versus history? Is it future, you know, is it future leaning? Like, what do you think the messages are that are being sent to the rest of the world now through hip hop? Because we've seen now hip hop will be 50 in 2023.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
you know, it's very much, you know, driven by youth culture, but it is not a young art form anymore. And so I'm just curious to know what your feeling is about what is being sent out and how, you know, how you sort of boomerang that back and then send what you guys are creating, you know, to us.
Well, I'd
I
say
think,
like, yeah, no, go.
Go ahead, Jason.
No, I was just gonna say
that,
like, yeah. Sorry. It's that Zoom confusion.
Okay,
Go,
Jason,
Babito,
and
go.
then no. Jason start, and then Bobbito bring us around, because I know there's going to be the historical piece when Bobbito brings it. But I want to hear about it. Like, as an artist, what do you see in terms of what the current hip hop wave is sending? Like, what is that wave that the world is catching?
But hip hop is also, just like any 50-year-old, has like widened its, you know, its spectrum is so wide today. I mean, I don't want to get too nostalgic, but it's hard not to when I've got, you know, Bobbito right here, because I mean, when I saw the Stretch and Bobbito, the documentary, Radio That Saves Lives, I cried because it really took me back.
It's called Radio that It's called Radio That Changed Lives. We did save a couple lives,
but saved is, you know, yeah, Freudian slip, man. Freudian slip. I feel like it saved my life, man.
Well, DJs be saving lives on a regular, so that's to be, you know.
Hip hop not only saved my life, it gave me life, man. But and looking at how, like you say in the documentary, a college radio station, very local radio show with two dudes doing it for free would just feed this global movement, actually be a part of what made hip hop such a global movement. Fast forward to today, you know, hip hop is, if not more successful, it's as successful a franchise as McDonald's. I'd say more successful than McDonald's if we're talking about American franchises, because, you know, on the continent of Africa, there's almost no McDonald's, but there's hip hop everywhere. I've been to every continent save Antarctica, and you will find hip hop in a local form anywhere, from Vietnam to China, South Africa, Senegal, Ethiopia, you know, Bolivia. People rapping their languages.
Are we sending them like the principles of hip hop as a culture, or are we just
think-
sending them the music at this
I think
point?
the principles, I think the principles came in the 90s, and then they're, you know, what happened in the Nordic countries was that, and in like Denmark and Sweden, everybody was rapping in English throughout the 90s. And then towards the end of the 90s, people started rapping in their native languages. And that's when the, you know, the culture deepened and became its kind of its own versions, even though it was taking all its cues from the United States. But at one point, you know, to me, French hip hop was as innovative, if not more innovative than American hip hop, you know, especially towards the end of the 90s. Yeah, Scion Super Crew, definitely. Like as the golden era waned, and you know, the kind of the era of commercial rap really started to take off. I felt like I was getting a lot of stuff from England and from France at that point that was almost more interesting than what I was getting from the States. Today, there's such a spectrum of you know, it's like, I feel like each country has its iteration of Drake, for example. Sweden has theirs. Sweden has many Drakes, you know. So that's, no, but you know, who are taking all
Land of the Drakes.
They're taking all
emo rap.
Land of the Drakes, but I'm sure like Norway has its Drakes, you know, and Germany definitely has some German Drakes in there. But
what I love is this idea.
So we're getting all these
language
trends. We're getting all these trends from the United States. But today, I would say right now in this moment, hip hop is again the vehicle carrying the message of now the Black Lives Matter movement, and the movement for Black lives is really being carried by hip hop. That's where I feel people in Sweden are getting it from, and getting energy from, to also push these movements in their countries. That's one takeaway.
News, because sometimes when I listen to the current, you know, sort of slate of what's happening, I feel like there's much less focus on the political and the socio-cultural, and more focus on the material or interpersonal relationships. And, you know, I'm not knocking that by any means. I've never been that get off my lawn type of person, but you know, it's good to know that is still, you know, breaking through and taking hold around the world. So Babito, your thoughts on the exploitation and what exactly you feel is being sent across and received.
Yeah, so I mean, you know, if we sort of extract the fact that we are based in New York and just look at hip hop globally, right, and not think that New York is no longer the epicenter of the culture. And I would say that the United States is no longer the epicenter of the culture either, right? And if we look at hip hop in a wholesome manner, right? I mean, you know, you look at the Battle of the Year in the B-boy, B-girl context.
No, come back, Babito.
I keep thinking it's me every time he freezes. I'm like, uh-oh. I literally don't move. I freeze.
I know I haven't touched anything because I'm usually the person who's freezing, but I don't know what's going on with his Wi-Fi where he is.
He's still in New York City though, right? He must be still in New York City.
And my Wi-Fi is usually, but
shaky. I think he actually went off. Maybe he's trying to call back in.
Yeah, maybe he left. Let's see. Is he gonna pop back in? No, he's still there. Okay.
He's there.
Oh, he turned it. Oh, he's turning it. Maybe the connectivity will be better if he's.
You gotta unmute, Babito.
Babito, unmute. Come back.
I'm so sorry that these technical issues are happening. I have no idea where everything's been cool. Can you hear me?
Okay, we can hear you.
We can hear you.
But you're sideways.
Can you see me? Oh.
Yeah, go horizontal.
Yeah,
there we go.
See,
or vertical, whatever. There we go. Boom. So you were saying that
right, cool.
that America is not necessarily the epicenter of the culture anymore, which is a deep statement.
I don't think. Yeah, I don't think it is. You know, graffiti changed for many decades after it had been completely squashed in New York. So, you know, I mean, ultimately, I think my point though with hip hop approaching 50 years is that, you know, a lot of people who were voiceless not only have voices now, but also are in positions, our platforms and brands to some genuine hip hop in other forms, right? So, for example, seeing shows like Blackish on ABC, you know, a huge platform, and it's incorporating like vernacular that no way would been passed in the 60s, 50s, 60s, 80s, you know, or 90s, or, you know, and we are seeing, beverage campaigns that feature Nas and Q-Tip, or, you know, it's just like really great artists. So like basically like the people who are making the corporate decisions are now of the age to have lived through hip hop and its innocent phases, so that they can manipulate it so that it's like regurgitated back to the public in a way that that's possibly meaningful, you know, which is good. Because all we saw in the 80s and 90s was corporate America and brands, you know, naturally on a global take advantage of the culture, where like now it's like the people are in place. Yeah, they're not exploiting it, they're like using it. Actually, like the brands are being exploited, you know, not the other way around.
Right.
You know?
Right. And the Roots were actually in the Blackish episode about Juneteenth.
I mean,
so it was like hip hop was
the Roots,
in it.
Yeah, the Roots on, you know, national television every single night on the nighttime shows. I mean, that's, you know, those are like very good things. When we look at, you know, you were mentioning Lauryn Hill, you know, getting nominated for 10 Grammys. I mean, when the Grammys started, they were like nominating like whack shit, you know, and so, you know what I'm saying? Like it's
or
like,
they were completely tone deaf and putting TLC in the same category as Public Enemy. And it's like,
that's what so it's taking a while, but like, you know, our generation and the generation, you know, after us, they're like permeating other ways to like keep hip hop alive. But you know, that said, it's, you know, there's no more gatekeepers, right? You mentioned earlier, like, you know, the 90s being like this golden era, and you know, there were people who were there, a vanguard, you know, whether it was a Source magazine or me and Stretch or you at Gavin, or, you know, the artists who are on the forefront, you know, really try to keep the music pure, and we can't go back to that, right? And we can maintain that purity and that joy that we all experience, but it's, you know, the tentacles of the octopus have like gone in a lot of different ways, and so we have to accept all of them. And you know, I'm not on the front line anymore like I used to be, because now I'm in my 50s, you know, and there needs to be other people, if they want to push it, you know, that are younger and more, you know, finger on the pulse. So
but that's what
you know,
we want. You know, we want someone from the next generation to take up the mantle, you know, and put their, you know, make their mark, but also, you know, keep the principles and the tenets of hip hop present, you know, for however it needs to be expressed for them.
Right? Yeah. I also want to bring it back to Jason, and my apologies for not knowing your work as well. But you know, Jason's writing books. You know, I'm making films. I'm sure Mapei is not just rhyming and battling, you know, sisters
She got
in
an
a corner
EP
of a
on
club.
Spotify right now. Like she is
Yeah,
good.
you know what I'm saying? Like we all
Oh wait, it's
diversify.
fire.
You know what I'm saying? We all diversifying our output, you know, as we should. We should continually be trying to challenge ourselves as human beings, you know, especially if we're a beacon for others to learn from. So, you know, that's where hip hop is at. Hip hop still has to have responsibility.
So perfect segue, Babito. Thank you. You're like the master of this. You totally have that. So I was gonna ask Mapei, like thinking about Nina Simone's quote of that it being a duty of an artist to reflect the times, like how much responsibility do you feel artists have to their audience versus to themselves, right? Because we have this sort of back and forth of like, I do this art for myself, right, as my own creative expression, as my outlet. But sometimes what we do as artists is needed because the audience doesn't even realize what they know they need, right? And so how do we square that, you know? in terms
Yeah,
of
I mean,
our
I
output
feel
and our
like
expression.
sometimes, oftentimes when artists try to do their thing and like put a message out there, they have no reach, like it doesn't get out there. I feel like hip hop now, the way we see it overseas, or the audience sees it, the people see it, is like it's not balanced. It's all about the product. You have like one Kendrick Lamar and then you have 10 killers to a Kendrick Lamar. You know what I mean? It's like you just show like a majority of a stereotype that is like it's just too much that way. You know what I mean? It's not like showing what could be or what the future could hold. And that's how a lot of like, politics are, or like just mental health. You don't do enough research to know what can be in the future, how people can feel in the future, how people can eat in the future. So I feel like we all need to take responsibility. For example, my father's an activist, but he's also very depressed because it's like a struggle, to get out there and like fight capitalism and fight what's being shown in the stereotypes and the products that are being sold to the people. So I don't think it's that balanced. So I feel like I have an opportunity. I always want to be honest to myself, but I'm also not just one type of person. I like everything. I like to look cute and I like to talk about deep things, so it's like you just want to, I don't know, I just feel like it's a community. Hip hop has always been about a community. So why not get together more like we're doing now? It's so easy now. With the internet and everything, you can have sessions online, you know what I mean? And before it was so easy to get a hold of the music. Now you have to look for it more. So it's like segregates people. So you have the people that listen to trap, and then you have the conscious people, and they're going against each other and vice versa. You know what I mean? I just think we need to get together and have these conversations and to move forward,
Yeah, fewer silos and more ciphers, because the thing about the cipher is that it brings all the different types of MCs into a circle, and may the best one kill it, and then it sort of ping-pongs within the circle and gives people an understanding of their perspective, or sort of reflects back to them as to like what they can do better, or how they can really, take their art to another level. Jason, what do you think?
No, I totally agree. And the explosivity of hip hop that it's had since its naissance, it still exists. And that kind of non-conformity that you were, that both you, Babito, and Mapei were talking about, that drew me in, that probably drew all of us to it. And at the same time, the DIY-ness, all those components still exist and are there. It's just that today, hip hop is also all these other things, and it has permeated just like jazz did in its day. And then, rhythm and blues that later became known as rock and roll did in its day. Hip hop has permeated all of global pop culture. Like you listen to any, Billboard pop hit today, and it's, it contains samples, and the fashion and the lingo is all, it's all derived from hip hop. And when you have a cultural force that's that powerful, it's also undeniable. But at the same time, like I look at Sweden, we have our share of gangster MCs or people who are more in it for the money or for whatever, who don't want to use hip hop as a vehicle for messages and activism. And then you have lots of people who do, who use it for LGBT, messaging, anti-racism, feminism. And hip hop is still this brilliant vehicle for just for advocacy and social justice issues, because it, a song, I could sit and say something, two of them might listen to 10% of what I'm saying. But if I wrote a rhyme and I rap it to them, or, rap it over a beat, I'll have like 65% of them, hoping that it's a good beat and a good rhyme. The better that beat is, the more of them I'm going to draw in, because hip hop still has that magnetism.
So Jason, while you're here talking about, you know, the lens or sort of the through line of hip hop, right? Kind of pivoting off of what Babito was saying about utilizing it in other mediums. Talk about how you have extended a drop of midnight, you know, from the page to the stage, and you know what that creative process was like. Because when I looked at the clip of the party that you had at Marcus Samuelson's restaurant.
At Jenny's, yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
like you were saying that, you know, you had just become so comfortable, not in necessarily a bad way, but just in terms of it being a place where you'd had mastery of recording albums, right? And that you were just looking to do something different. So, you know, talk a little bit about this process of really taking, you know, that mastery, but then expressing it in places where you were much less comfortable.
Yeah, definitely. When I started writing my book, A Drop of Midnight, I really felt I had that same feeling of being a novice as I did when I started writing rhymes. And to me, my kind of, before I got my master's degree in rhyme writing, I was still, you know, well, let's say maybe I got my master's, was way past 96, maybe like 97, 98 or something. So it took me a while to really become what I would say myself is a good rapper. And when at the outset of writing a book, I really felt like, wow, I'm heading into uncharted territory. I don't know how to do this. I've never really done this before, but I had that, you know, each chapter I wrote felt like it was better than the previous one. And it just fed that a curiosity and that kind of passion that I felt when I started writing rhymes back when I was 14 years old. But then having spent, you know, almost 2 years writing the book, I really wanted to get back into, I just missed music so much. And I wanted to bring, you know, storytelling and set it to a backdrop of music, but without losing that longer story form that a book has. But a song has like 3 minutes, or maybe certain artists that have been super conceptual that have done whole albums that kind of are one arc of a story. But mostly, you know, you got those 3.5, 4, 5 minutes to tell your story, but in a book you have this length.
Right.
So it was kind of a gamble bringing it to the stage, also because a lot of what I'm talking about in the book, talking about race, talking about the history of slavery, talking about Sweden and Scandinavia's history and slavery, a lot of those things are very considered like controversial, just haven't been heard on a stage in Sweden before. So I didn't know if people were gonna, you know, throw bottles at me, or if they were gonna, you know,
Right.
stand up and
What is the
applaud.
reaction
And
gonna be? Yeah.
yeah, so it was really interesting bringing that long form storytelling and setting that to music. And I really think that's what I want to do more of in my future work. But it was really challenging to do it, you know, and also playing like in theaters, another audience was coming because the ticket costs like 40, 50 bucks. So it wasn't, you know, 17, 25-year-olds coming to the shows. It was, you know, your 35, 40, 45-year-olds. But just like Babito was saying, you know, people today have grandfathers and grandmothers who were MCs. So people have come up.
Yep. Diamond D was on Facebook showing his granddaughter. It was like, okay, yeah.
And, you know, so a lot of people are, even though they are middle-aged, and I myself, I'm 45, you know, people are raised on this from infancy. They're raised on, like, hip hop has never not been around for the entirety of their lives. So just also what you were saying, Bobby, so it just speaks to how it's permeated everything in pop culture. So the references are still similar, and you can use those references even though you're in a totally different room, like addressing a theater audience.
So we are like 10 minutes from the end of our time, which is insane. It's like, I feel like we started out with an hour and looked up.
Just scratching the surface.
It's just, and yeah, and it's like,
Yeah.
okay, 10 minutes left, but I want to make sure that each of you shares like what's coming up for you, what's next for you. I mean, you know, Babito, you saying you're not in the forefront like you used to be, but I'm sure you got some stuff in the hopper. So so I'm going to start with Mapei to share a little bit of what you're up to currently and what we can look for from you in the future, and then Babito, and then Jason, I'm going to have you close us out.
So I'm working on 2 projects. The project with the Swedish rapper called Thomas Rushak and a producer called Okazaki, and it's like a psychedelic, soulful album. We just sit and vibe. So we're going to try to put that out whenever we're ready. And then I collected beats from a producer called Henri, and I'm going to just rhyme over that and like take responsibility and express myself and vent.
Dope. A little more emceeing than sort of the
Yeah.
recent vocalizing you've been doing.
Yep.
That's dope.
Yeah.
Okay, and Babito, what's going on with you? New movie, another book? What you doing? What you doing?
Look at that
You
one.
got your own.
That
You
one.
got a new
Yeah.
sneaker dropping. Like, what's happening?
Stretch and I, we actually celebrate our 30th anniversary of broadcasting October 25th.
Awesome.
Crazy to think that 30 years passed.
That is amazing.
But on
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Thank you.
Man.
On October 22nd, next Thursday, from 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Standard Time, we are going to debut a new radio show, Stretch and Babito Radio,
Wow.
on a international platform that I'm not allowed to mention just yet, but the announcement is like probably going to happen tomorrow. Starts with an A, you know, huge digital platform.
Are you still doing the podcast with NPR?
No, we're no longer doing the podcast. We have a new podcast in development now. And then me and Stretch, we have a band called the M19. So, you know, talk about branching out and trying to challenge oneself as an artist. We released a debut album titled No Request back in January. We've taken our band and also with the, you know, 2020 technology, acapella versions of Big LG's freestyle, Method Man and Ghost, you know, et cetera, from our 90s archive, and we have remixed them with our band. And all of those, well, actually the first 3 is Big L, Jay-Z, Biggie, and Method Man, Ghostface. Those remixes drop October 23rd, next Friday. So, you know, October 22nd, we debut our new radio show. October 23rd, we drop, you know, 3 new songs that we've worked on. And it's a super, super blessing. I have a lot more going on, but I'll cut it off at there because I don't want to be a mic hog.
And all those NDAs, all of NDAs, you sign it, you know, gotta keep things under wraps.
Yeah.
All right, Jason.
I'm happy to hear it's on that particular platform because that means we'll be able to get it instantly over here too.
Yes.
Yep, exactly.
So that's really dope. Congratulations, man. And it's amazing that it's been 30 years too.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So Jason, you've had your book out since the beginning of March. COVID has kind of, you know, interrupted a few things, but the Rona won't stop it. We still
pushing,
saw you had an ad in the New York Times. You're killing the game still. So tell us what's next.
Yeah, no. So COVID definitely put an indefinite parentheses, still waiting for the end parentheses on the stage performance part, right? So I was supposed to, like Monique said in the beginning, the stage performance was supposed to open on March 30th, then was pushed to October 13th, which at the time felt like just a crazy long time to wait, you know, because we were 2 days away from going into rehearsal when we realized that, okay, no, this
shutdown is happening.
This COVID thing is not just gonna magically disappear like some would have thought, but now it's postponed till I guess October next year. So at this point, I'm just really hoping that date holds. But the quarantine gave me a chance to record a new album. So me and my friends Quartz and Polen, so we recorded a new album, which should be coming out early next year. I I had to go into therapy mode when I came back because I had to I literally was on the last plane from New York City to Stockholm on March 15th or March 16th.
Wow.
And I was supposed to be in New York for the entirety of the spring. And all of a sudden I'm in Stockholm, and which was cool. I was with my family, you know, but
Right.
I had to kind of, my grieving process needed you know, help. And I would just write a verse every day and just rap into my phone and put it on Instagram. And that would, you know, writing that verse would take kind of the 6 hours that I have to work in a day when my daughter's at daycare. So I did that, and that then led me into recording a new album. So I got that, and then I'm actually starting work on a new book. I'm basically at the notes synopsis stage, but I have a good idea for it.
And when is the album dropping?
It should be dropping like first quarter 21.
Okay.
And then also me and Marcus Samuelson started a podcast that was also something born out of the quarantine. So we're kind of on that journey, in the beginning of that journey. So doing that.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you, all of you, for just coming together with me and sharing, you know, this passion that we have for hip hop and for the culture to move forward, but for it also to be about, you know, something that is commercially powerful, you know, commercially impactful. You know, no artist deserves to starve. And so I've always sort of felt myself to be that, you know, that bridge between creativity and commerce. And it's just really awe-inspiring to see, you know, how much you guys' output is actually, you know, circulating and generating just, you know, new levels of experience in terms of how we interact and how we connect, but, you know, all through the lens of hip hop. And so I just want to thank you for joining us today. And Harlem Stage, big thank you to Monique Martin and to Mandy and James King and the team for, you know, the opportunity to bring all of these great minds together. For myself, you can reach me at Official Lip Game on Instagram. I'm going to ask everybody to share their IG handles and definitely support everyone that you're here with today. So give us your IGs real quick, Jason.
I'm Jason TMBK. Thank you, Bobbito, Harlem Stage. Thank you, Thembisa. Thank you, Mapei. It's such an honor to be here with you guys.
And Mapei, what's yours?
Mapei Official. Thank you so much. This was I'm gonna sleep so good now.
This is dope. Yeah.
And Babito, kick yours. The IG handle.
I'm Kool Bob Love, across all social platforms. And
Kool
a true
Bob
blessing.
Love with a K.
I used to live right up the block from Harlem Stage, and can remember when it reopened. Actually, remember when it was like not occupied. So it's brilliant to see what the institution is doing for not just the community, but with an event like this for the world. So props.
Yes, thank you everyone for joining. Make sure you share the link widely. Our broadcast is going to end, and take it away, Monique.
I am so full from this conversation. I feel like, as somebody said, I don't know if it was which one, we just scratched the surface. So with that being said, this is a launch of a series around hip hop culture broadly, as you all are in different sectors: film, publishing, fashion. So please know that Harlem Stage is a home to you all, and come on in. I love that you used to live down the street, Babito. So you remember when, from what I hear, the gatehouse was shuttered for decades and pigeons lived in there because the organization started as Aaron Davis Hall. I don't know if you ever attended performances at Aaron Davis Hall. But
my brother went to City College, so I'm born and raised in Manhattan, so I know the area very well.
Nice, nice. So know that it is your home. We're going to keep our eyes on A Drop of Midnight for 2021. And I do have one final question to ask you guys, and this is also to inspire the young artists that are coming behind you. We know that we're going to be in this virtual space for a minute. We don't know when venues will be able to open up. So what is your recommendation and perspective on cinematic, bringing a cinematic quality or cinematic layer to your work, because we will be virtual even when we open up our venues. Has that shifted your process?
I would say I haven't done any virtual like performances yet, but I've seen a lot. I mean, just during the spring, Instagram was just like all time, you know, it was just incredible to see the access you got. And, you know, like Drez from Black Sheep sitting in his apartment, just telling stories from back in the day, like stuff that I would have never had, or Erykah Badu for that sake, you know, performing or, you know, just hanging out in her house.
In her own, yeah.
Exactly. So to me, I just think that bringing some form of intimacy and maybe giving the audience, fans, listeners, viewers, something that they wouldn't get normally on a festival stage or on a club stage or in a music video, that seems to be the key. At least for me, as on the consumer end, that's what I've appreciated most. So that's what I want to try and bring whenever I do a virtual thing.
Nice.
For me as a producer, it's really had me think about taking my projects and actually shooting them, because I'm now going to need the content, you know, to extend and expand my brand. So I came on as a producer for a series called One Last Shot, where they follow the journey of an artist who, you know, got derailed either by life or by circumstance or, you know, some inciting incident, and then, you know, stopped doing their music and then decided, you know what, I'm going to pick the mantle back up because I still have that fire in my belly, so to speak. So One Last Shot is going to be debuting online this fall. And, you know, normally I'm that behind the scenes person, not really that out front person, but it was like, you know what, I got to get into this and start to expand. So I'm hosting the show as well as producing, which is definitely, like Jason was saying, stepping outside of my comfort zone. But it was fun. And so I'm looking forward to the debut of that. So Mapei, what do you have going on?
I've been doing the virtual performing since COVID, you know, broke out. So
any tips for folks who are, you know, sort of in that space of like, how do I step my game up, or how do I even start if they were always focused on live events?
I think that the virtual world is not so corporate. So I think you could just reach out to anyone and, you know, just ask if you could perform or do your own thing and try to just put it on YouTube and put the word out there on Instagram. You know, it's not that difficult as long as you do something. You just don't sit and hold everything to yourself. So that's.
Yeah, and don't be waiting for the right moment, so to speak, because to Jason's
just
point, you know, he thought it was going to be a long wait for October 2020, and now it's 2021, and it's like, you know, if the Olympics is postponed, like, don't wait, do what you, you know, because who knows, right?
Quality and quantity.
Yeah, both. So what's up, Babito? What do you think? Any tips for the folks coming up looking to get their virtual swerve on in these COVID streets?
He's on mute.
Oh, Babito, unmute yourself.
Nah, I don't know who be doing. I don't know who be muting me, man.
Impart some OG wisdom for these folks who are really having to step their game up in this current environment.
My last film was titled Rock Rubber 45s, and it was an autobiographical documentary. And there's one scene where I sort of like laid down a blueprint for freelance creatives. And the one jewel that, I mean, it doesn't matter if I've spoken at Rikers Island or Community Center or Brown University, that, you know, the one thing I always tell people is like, if you are searching for ideas, see what's missing and fill the void. And right now in the virtual space, we are still, because it's so new and profound, we don't really know the limits, or we haven't, you know, we're only scratching the surface. So, you know, if you're trying to figure out, you know, what's your next move or how to navigate, you know, really be a student and see, you know, like as Jason was saying, he watches Dress, and, you know, he's engaging. He's not just an artist like asking people to watch him. He's still a fan, you know, and we all are. And so Yeah, I think that's important to give back, but also to like purvey, and then to use that as your platform to figure, all right, everybody's doing this, I'm gonna do this. And that's, to me, like that, you know, in my career as an entrepreneur and a freelance creative, like that's how I've always been able to be a step ahead, is like providing something that no one else is doing. I don't do it necessarily better than anybody doing it, but I do it in a way that's unique, and that's what sets me apart. So
Well, and you
that's
do
my
it
little
your
jewel.
way. You know what I'm saying? And I
Yeah.
think that's really where the value is that there's the uniqueness of how you bring it, what you bring to the table.
Yep.
You know, and
Yep.
and the through line to this whole conversation has been like, you know, how does hip hop inform identity, and how does that information given to the identity then translate into creativity, right? So it's perfect, really. I think that when you fill the void, automatically you set the bar, and then everybody else has to respond.
Right.
Thank you, thank you, thank you all. We have two conversations left with A Drop of Midnight. We're so excited about this project that has been postponed. On the 19th, this Monday, you can see an archival performance of Jason's workshop performance at Harlem Stage. It took place in 2018. So you can see him spitting, you can see him acting, and all of that. So please tune in if you can. And on the 22nd, he'll be in conversation with Farnaz Arbabi, who was the original director and actually helped him take the book to a script and to the stage. So I'd like to leave you with a quote by one of my favorite authors, Lucille Clifton, who says, "You cannot build something you cannot imagine." So thank you for your brilliant imaginations. And we'll talk.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Peace and love.